Then I took a smidge and applied it down there.
This One's Wife. Failures and Fuck-Ups. Hello, I'm hgtudor. Septime sends a poster on the subreddit Saint This One's Wife, they use her full name, as you know I do not, invited people to list the things that this one's wife has failed at, and the things that she has fucked up. And on seeing this provided me with a useful opportunity to utilize this call to action to explain more about this one's wife's narcissism. Now, before we get into the list, many people repeatedly wonder, how is it that a person such as this one's wife, who has been given such privilege, so many advantages, and effectively a head start over many people, how can she fail so spectacularly? As you know, she was a mediocre actress on a cable television program. Few people had heard about her. She was seeking to increase her standing by making connections in Toronto, where Suits was filmed, and then, driven by her narcissism, decided that it would be advantageous to try and hook up with a British gentleman. Naturally, her narcissism sought to find somebody that would cater to the prime aims, with a particular emphasis on residual benefits with regard to connections and wealth. Thus, she ensnared the dimwit, the Prince of Pink Pancakes, and, as I've explained to you before, her narcissism undoubtedly clapped its hands in glee and thought, "Fuck me, lads, she's only gone and hit the jackpot, completely knocked it out of the park. Never did we ever think that she'd be able to land somebody like him. Fantastic. He's easy to control because he's vulnerable and he just thinks with his dick. He hasn't got too many brain cells. Fantastic. He's quite emotional, plenty of fuel to obtain. Oodles of character traits. He's a prince of the realm, for goodness sake. Our gal is going to have a field day feeding off him. And as for those residual benefits, well, surely he's a billionaire, isn't he? Being a member of the royal family, he probably shits diamonds, sleeps on a gold pillow. Yippee fucking yay. Result. And thus the narcissism really did think that it had achieved pay dirt as a consequence of her ensnaring Harry. What did this bring for her? Well, privilege. She entered the royal family. She had a staff waiting on her, advising her, helping her. She gained a title, which of course a narcissist loves having a title, for reasons I've explained to you before. She then had access to security, which made her feel important. She had access to lots of different things by virtue of being in the royal family. She entered parts of buildings that people ordinarily would never get to see. She was introduced to people that ordinarily she would never meet. She had the opportunity to cultivate an image where people would like her as a consequence of showing service and being an interesting and enthusiastic member of the royal family. She had all of that offered. A privileged, wealthy, fantastic lifestyle. Now, it wouldn't be the choice for everybody, but for someone like her, who's always dreamt of being a princess and has been treated like a princess by her father, it was dreams coming true. And thus, she had the opportunity to bolt on that institution and thus live out her days in privilege, being loved, being liked, with no particular concerns or worries. But she fucked it up. She then goes to the United States thinking, well, I can return here with my tales of being hard done to, but the fact that I am a duchess, they're going to lap it up in Hollywood. I'm going to come over here. People are going to be throwing money at me to talk to me. They're going to be offering me shows and film parts. Everybody will want to know me. Everybody will want to know what it was like. I can name my price, and I'll have attained Hollywood royalty also. I'll set up my court in Monty's shit show and let them come to me, and they can come and kiss my pinky ring. And at first, it happened like that. People were interested in her. There was a lot of buzz around her. Netflix came with their huge offer, Spotify similarly. It looked like the future was bright, and then she fucked it up. So how is it that she has fucked up what you might argue is not one, but two glorious opportunities? Well, it's down to three things. One, she has no talent. Two, she's largely unliked. Three, her narcissism. The absence of talent is self-explanatory. There's nothing there which people can say, yeah, she's a total dickwad, but she's fucking good at that. So, for instance, you might find that there's a professional footballer who you think's a complete dick, but you know that he bangs those goals in and is really talented. Or a pop star who you think is an absolute douche canoe, but they're a fantastic performer and songwriter. There's talent. And if you've got talent, you can invariably get away with being unpopular. Unfortunately for her, she doesn't have any talent. Well, that doesn't always hold some people back, because even though you might not be talented, you can be really likable. That people think that you're fun, that you're interesting, that you're kind, that you're dedicated. She's none of those things, and she's unliked. And she's largely unliked as a consequence of her narcissism, because that's what drives her behaviours, and it's her behaviours which have caused people not to like her. So she's got a double whammy of problems to begin with. One, she's no talent. Two, she's largely unliked. And three, her narcissism has caused her to fuck it up because she's entitled. She operates with magical thinking. She truly, truly believes that all she has to do is turn up and things will happen. Take American Riviera Orchard, for instance. She seriously thought that all she need do is create a crappy Instagram account, pump out some shitty video, and that millions of people would then sign up to it, go, ooh, American Riviera Orchard, brilliant, brilliant, can't wait. And then she would do the jam scam, and that celebrities will be falling over themselves to be involved, increasing ARO's followers, so that she could then turn to some organisation and say, look at this brand I've created, which doesn't sell anything and has no infrastructure, but because it's related to me and has millions of followers, pay me millions of dollars. She seriously thinks that things will just happen because it's her. That's her magical thinking. She's got no sense of accountability to putting in the hard yards. She's got no consideration for other people, for instance, how they're affected by what she does or what she fails to do. And therefore, this entitlement, magical thinking, lack of accountability, absence of emotional empathy, and her manipulative behaviours all work against her with regard to sustained success. Now, it's not always the case for many narcissists. There are many narcissists who are hugely successful. But this one's wife's narcissism was never designed to operate at the high level that she somehow fluked her way into getting to. And thus, being unpopular, talentless, and because of her narcissism, she fails again and again and again. Because her narcissism basically says, here's an idea, it'll work. And the world goes, you need to put some effort in there to overcome your lack of talent and lack of popularity. Oh, threat to control. Well, strike that. Nullify threat to control by withdrawal. We'll go and do something else instead. Right, brilliant idea. World will sit up and take notice. It'll make me lots of money. World says, you're going to have to put some work in there in order to create something and to overcome the fact that you've got no talent and you're not popular. Oh, that's a threat to control. Right, well, nullify that threat to control by withdrawing from that criticism and not moving that forward because it's not worked at the first time of asking. Let's go on to something else. Another new idea. World will sit up and take notice. Money will be thrown at me. The world will love me for it. World responds again. You actually need to create something. You need to deliver. You need to put some work effort into all of this because you need to overcome the fact that you haven't got any talent and you're unpopular. Oh, a threat to control again. Well, rather than deal with it by actually delivering, we'll just withdraw from it. That idea should have worked, but it didn't. We'll go on to the next one. Rinse and repeat. And that's what happens with her. Over and over again, she fails and fucks up because her narcissism simply says, by virtue of just turning up, this should work. Oh, it hasn't. Okay, now that's a threat to control, so we'll just withdraw from this project and go and start a new one. And of course, she doesn't learn from this because of the compartmentalization of her narcissism, which jettisons the last failure and has a focus on the new thing singularly, believing this'll work. And then when it doesn't, it gets jettisoned and she moves on to the next thing. Don't believe me? Well, I'm sure many of you do. But here is a list of the things that she's failed at and have fucked up, contributed by the good burgers of the subreddit, This One's Wife, Saint This One's Wife. Just sit back and listen and appreciate the length of so many things that she's attempted to do and has failed, provided by those contributors. The 40 by 40 scheme. Pearl, the animated series that got nowhere. The creation of New Tig didn't happen. Running for senator never occurred. Becoming the face of Dior weren't interested. Archetypes failed. 1 season long and was roundly panned by the critics. Spotify, of course, then jettisoned her. The Suits reboot never actually occurred. The cooking show, where is it? American Riviera Orchard, see parts pass him for how that's fallen flat on its face. Becoming the female lead in Bodyguard 2 didn't transpire. A run for presidency, nothing has happened. Meet Me at the Lake, where's that got to? Clever Coffee, missed fist bump, nothing has come of it. Being in a Marvel movie, hasn't happened. Being able to earn $1 million per speaking engagement, never happened. Being a successful working member of the royal family, failed at it. The Jam Scam, only 10 out of 50 posted it. Lemonada, it's been put back by a year. As soon as she turned up, it was shoved back. Doing the voiceover for Disney. She did one, wasn't well received, didn't get anything else. The push for parental leave, didn't manifest. Being a healthy influence on Harry, in general terms, as steering him away from drink and drugs, that hasn't succeeded. Wanting the US Open to be a patron, didn't get anywhere. Becoming best friends with Gwyneth Paltrow, Jennifer Aniston, Katy Perry, Cameron Diaz, fell flat on its face. Being able to command $250,000 per Instagram post, hasn't happened. Building up a successful following for American Riviera Orchard, hasn't happened. Fell way below what someone with her global coverage could expect to achieve and has since been losing followers. Providing podcasts with Audible, never got off the ground. The Diana cosplay car chase, couldn't even do that properly. Her supposed calligraphy is just cursive with swirls. Being a successful author, look at The Bench and the ridicule that followed when she did the reading on YouTube. Becoming a fashion icon, hopeless, fashion houses stay away from her. Global thought leader, hasn't occurred. Being Maltese but then became 43% Nigerian, resulting in ridicule. Provision of content for Netflix, semi-successful but repeated talk about how they're dissatisfied and unlikely to renew the contract. Remaining friends with Serena Williams, that's all gone quiet. Joining the A-list, failed. Being a Bond girl, it was said she was in the running to be a Bond girl for No Time to Die, which was in pre-production and untitled. But then she got engaged to Harry, so apparently it took her out of the running if she was ever in it. Creating a TV show for Netflix called Bad Manners, based on the character Miss Havisham from Dickens's novel Great Expectations. Where's that got to? Writing a memoir, nothing showing. Being taken seriously as a whole, failed at that. Look at the ridicule she receives worldwide, from South Park, from Family Guy. The COVID plan, back then stated, "We will be sharing information and resources to help all of us navigate the uncertainty, from posting accurate information and facts from trusted experts to learning about measures we can take to keep ourselves and our families healthy." Nothing happened. Becoming a talk show hostess didn't happen. The visit to the United Nations in New York, she was asked to leave. Helping out at Uvalde, disastrous. Being a feminist, failed. Environmentalist, failed. Philanthropist, failed. Loving mother, failed. Fashion icon, failed. Happily married, failed. Legs that go on for days, failed. Known as chicken legs. Heart attack beautiful. Roundly criticised for her appearance. Savour of hand soap. Didn't do it on her own as she suggested. Whip smart has demonstrated that she's anything but. All of those things she's failed at. And remember, what was her mantra? Don't give it 5 minutes if you're not going to give it 5 years. She gives it about a picosecond before giving up. Now, imagine if your glorious narrator had perhaps kidnapped this one's wife and popped her in a chair and turned on the old light and said, "We have ways of making you talk." Or rather said, "This one's wife, I'm going to list all of the things that you've attempted and that you've failed at." And she has to sit and listen. I don't countenance any interruption whatsoever. And I have to say to her, these are all the things that you've attempted to be, all of the things that you've attempted to do. And I've also explained how each and every one of them have resulted in failure and fuck up. What say you? How would she respond to it? Well, as a mid-range narcissist, there'd be some instances where she would roll out denial. She would simply try and argue with me that she hadn't failed, that she had been successful. Of course, ultimately, she's not going to get very far with your glorious narrator, as I would deliver the evidence which would demonstrate that what she was saying was incorrect. But she would initially start off by utilising denial to try and argue with me to suggest that she hasn't buggered these things up. Unfortunately, that won't work, and I'll continue to threaten her control by pointing out that you failed at this and you fucked up this because look at this, look at that. I'll bring the evidence. Therefore, her narcissism would have to try and nullify the threat to control. It's likely that she would turn on the waterworks and dole out a pity play, trying to suggest that she couldn't help it and she tried really hard and it's not her fault, and don't be so mean pointing all of this out. Naturally, doling out a pity play with someone who has no emotional empathy, i.e. me, isn't going to get you very far. Therefore, I just brush it to one side and continue to point out that she's failed and she's fucked up. What she would then attempt to do is blame shift. That she would recognise that there's been failure, because how can she not, as a consequence of me keep putting the evidence in front of her? But what her narcissism will do to try and protect her is suggest that it's down to other people. That people fail to promote things, that people fail to carry out things under her instruction, that Harry got in the way, that Harry messed it up, that there are unseen forces working against her. There'll be a whole dramatis personae of people identified and unidentified who purportedly have prevented her from succeeding in relation to all of these things. That is typical behaviour of the mid-range narcissist. She would go through each item on the list. Well, with the 40 by 40, Melissa McCarthy was meant to drive that forward, but she just didn't, and I don't know why. I'm very sad that that failed. With regard to Pearl, well, that was Elton John's husband's fault. He was meant to move that forward with the studio, and as far as I know, he just sat on his hands. I can't do everything at once, can I? The new Tig, well, I decided ultimately that I wasn't going to do that because American Riviera Orchard was a better option for me. So at the end of the day, I think I've been badly advised by this agency in relation to that. Yes, I was meant to run for senator and I was meant to be picked as that individual, but at the last minute they put somebody else in. I think I'd been double-crossed. Again, not my fault, is it? And she will go through every item on that list and point out how it's not her fault and will blame somebody else for it. But of course, your glorious narrator wouldn't accept that. that I wouldn't sit there like some supine interviewer and go, oh, right, okay. I would bring it back to the point that, no, it wasn't their fault. It was your fault because you're lazy and you're entitled and you never see anything through. And I would keep driving home the point. Eventually, she would seek to nullify the repeated threat to control that I would pose by getting up and running away. She would physically withdraw herself from the situation. If it were the case that she couldn't do so, that she couldn't get out of the room that she and I were in, and I kept on and on pointing out her failures, repeatedly threatening her sense of control, the next stage for her would be probably to throw herself on the ground sobbing and wailing and screaming to drown out what I'm saying for the purpose of nullifying threat to control, or even quite possibly physically attack me, which would be quite hilarious because I could restrain her with one finger. But the point of this is that this list, which has been compiled by the dutiful individuals at St. This One's Wife, not only provides us with a tremendous reminder of all the things that she's failed at and fucked up, but it gives me the opportunity to explain not only how her narcissism is central to that failure, so people understand that, but also to help you understand how she would deal with being repeatedly pointed out to her that it's because of her and nothing else. Are there any other failures that you can think of? Are there any other fuck-ups that ought to be added to that list? If so, please provide them in the comments. I'm HG Tudor. Thank you for listening.